You are a chosen one, and your entire community is about to discover that your family has been living the most elaborate lie ever conceived. The whispers started innocently enough, a comment that died when you entered the room, a phone call that ended abruptly, a look that lingered too long. But what began as subtle signs has now become an avalanche of evidence that's about to expose not just your family's deception, but a conspiracy so vast it reaches into the highest levels of power. Right now there are 3 separate investigations converging on the same shocking truth. There's DNA evidence that proves everything you've been told about your origins is fabricated. There's a federal informant preparing to reveal documents that will destroy multiple government careers. And there's a grandfather whose decades-old secret is about to consume not just him, but everyone who helped him orchestrate what can only be described as the perfect crime, except it wasn't perfect, and now it's all falling apart. The first crack in their perfect facade appeared when you started succeeding, despite everything they did to prevent it. Every time your intuition proved correct, every time their manipulation failed to work on you, every time that inexplicable protection around you became too obvious to ignore, they grew more desperate, and desperate people make mistakes. Your family's fear wasn't about losing you, it was about getting caught. Transparency, the fear in their eyes wasn't parental concern, it was terror. Pure, undiluted terror of someone who knows their time is running out. Because what you're about to discover isn't just that you're adopted, it's that your adoption was a contract with specific terms, including detailed instructions on exactly how and when you were supposed to be eliminated. Everyone already suspects something. Your neighbors have started asking uncomfortable questions about why you look nothing like your supposed family. Your childhood friends are sharing stories about the strange restrictions placed on your activities. Former teachers are remembering peculiar instructions they received about your education and development, but the real bombshell is sitting in a courthouse filing cabinet right now, a document that proves your adoption was funded by agencies that don't officially exist, processed through courts that shouldn't have had jurisdiction, and approved by officials who were paid substantial amounts to look the other way. The grandfather who orchestrated this masterpiece thought he was untouchable. He created a web of lies, so complex that each family member only knew their piece of the puzzle. Some believed you were a troubled child who needed firm guidance. Others thought you were potentially dangerous and required constant surveillance. But only the inner circle knew the truth. You were a job, a contract, a problem to be solved permanently. Trumpandomenti, every poison they fed you should have worked. Every manipulation they tried should have broken your spirit. Every attempt to dim your light should have succeeded. But divine protection doesn't just shield, it documents. Every failed attempt created evidence. Every unexplained recovery generated questions. Every miraculous escape from danger produced reports that are now being compiled by very interested parties. People are starting to piece together the pattern, your mysterious childhood illnesses that baffled doctors, the medications that never worked properly, the special diet they insisted on that made no medical sense, the way certain family members always seemed to be watching you, waiting for something to happen. The program that targeted you wasn't unique. This has been happening for decades, with families across the country being paid to adopt children with unusual spiritual gifts for the express purpose of suppressing those abilities. Most of the time, it worked. Bright lights were dimmed before they could shine. Potential awakeners were neutralized before they could awaken others. You were the exception, the one they couldn't break, the proof that their system had a fatal flaw. Right now, there's a federal agent staring at files that prove everything the community is about to discover. This agent has been part of the system for decades, facilitating adoptions that weren't really adoptions, approving documents that weren't really legitimate, funding programs that weren't really about child welfare. But something changed when they reviewed your case file. Something about the scope of what they'd been participating in, the systematic nature of the targeting, the cold calculation behind every decision. They realized they weren't just following orders, they were participating in crimes against consciousness itself. The agent has been collecting evidence for months now, preparing to expose the entire network. Bank records showing payments to adoptive families, medical records documenting failed poisoning attempts, communication logs between government officials and private contractors. Most damning of all, a list of other targets, other chosen ones who were supposed to be neutralized but somehow survived. This informant's testimony is going to bring down not just your family, but an entire system that's been operating in the shadows for generations. The architect of your planned destruction is losing his grip on reality, and it's accelerating. The grandfather who convinced your family to participate in this elaborate deception is experiencing what can only be described as spiritual psychosis. The dark forces he's been channeling to fuel his operations are now consuming him from within. People are starting to notice his erratic behavior, the way he rambles about ancient contracts and spiritual warfare, the way he insists on secret family meetings where he makes increasingly desperate demands, the way he started talking about neutralizing threats and completing missions in front of people who have no idea what he's referring to. His breakdown is revealing things he was supposed to keep hidden, names of other participants, details about the government contracts, locations where evidence was hidden, the addresses of other families who were paid to suppress children just like you. Every word he speaks in his deteriorating mental state is another nail in the coffin of the conspiracy he spent decades building. There's a family member who's been carrying an impossible burden, the one who knew more than they were supposed to know but wasn't supposed to tell. They've been watching the grandfather's mental deterioration, seeing the fear in other family members' eyes, and realizing that the secret they've been keeping is about to destroy everyone they care about. This person has been receiving calls from investigators, visits from federal agents, pressure from family members who are starting to panic. They're being pulled between loyalty to the family and the growing realization that what they participated in was fundamentally evil. Everyone is watching this person's behavior change, the way they avoid eye contact now, the way they seem to be carrying the weight of the world on their shoulders, the way they keep starting conversations about confession and redemption. Their breaking point is coming, and when it arrives, their testimony is going to confirm everything the investigators suspect and reveal details that will shock even the most prepared observers. The financial evidence has been hiding in plain sight for decades, and now forensic accountants are tracing every dollar. The mysterious payments that allowed your family to afford things they shouldn't have been able to afford. The child support that came from accounts that don't match any legitimate agency. The regular deposits that continued long after any normal adoption assistance would have ended. Your adoption cost someone a fortune, but it wasn't spent on your welfare. It was payment for services rendered, services that included systematic poisoning, spiritual suppression, and eventual elimination. Everyone is about to discover that your family was essentially running a murder-for-hire operation disguised as a loving home. The money trail reveals something even more disturbing. This wasn't an isolated incident. Similar payments went to families across the country. The same mysterious accounts funded dozens of adoptions. The same government contracts paid for the same services nationwide. The scope of the conspiracy is beyond anything anyone imagined, and your case is just one piece of a much larger puzzle that's finally being assembled. John Pabbitts and your neighbors are starting to compare notes, and the picture they're painting is horrifying. The teachers who were told you had special needs that required unusual restrictions. The doctors who were instructed to prescribe medications that made no medical sense. The coaches who were warned to limit your physical activities. The clergy who were asked to monitor your spiritual development. Everyone thought they were helping a troubled child. In reality, they were unknowing participants in a systematic suppression program designed to prevent your spiritual awakening. The community is beginning to understand that they were all manipulated, all used as tools in a conspiracy they never could have imagined. The guilt and anger building in your hometown is reaching a critical mass that's going to explode when the full truth comes out. But something else is beginning to dawn on everyone. If this happened to you, if an entire network of people was paid to suppress one child's spiritual development, how many other children were targeted the same way? Before the network's desperation reaches its peak, something even more shocking is discovered. Your entire identity was manufactured from birth. The investigation reveals that your original birth certificate was replaced with a forgery. Your social security number was reassigned from another child who mysteriously disappeared from records. Your medical history was completely fabricated to support the narrative they needed to justify their actions. The forensic document experts working with federal investigators have uncovered a sophisticated identity theft operation that required coordination between multiple government agencies. Original records were destroyed, new ones were created, and an entire paper trail was constructed to make you legally invisible while creating a false persona they could control. The most disturbing discovery is the existence of multiple identities created for you. There were backup plans, alternate documents prepared in case you needed to be moved to different locations, different families, different suppression programs. You weren't just adopted, you were processed through a system designed to erase children from existence and replace them with manageable fabrications. There's widespread shock at the realization that identity theft at this level requires institutional support. This wasn't a family crime or even a regional conspiracy. This was a federal program with unlimited resources and official sanction. People's shock deepens when medical records reveal the true scope of the poisoning attempts. Local doctors, nurses, and healthcare workers were recruited into the conspiracy through a combination of bribes, blackmail, and false information. They were told you suffered from rare conditions that required experimental treatments that were actually systematic poisoning protocols designed to weaken your spiritual defenses. Hospital records show medications that should never have been prescribed to someone your age. Blood work that was deliberately misread to justify harmful interventions. Vaccinations that contained substances not found in standard formulations. Even routine dental work was used as an opportunity to introduce toxins that were supposed to accumulate over time and create seemingly natural health crises. Evidence reveals that your medical file was flagged in a database that marked you for special treatment wherever you sought health care. Emergency room visits resulted in procedures that weren't medically necessary. School health screenings led to referrals for treatments that made no clinical sense. Even minor injuries were used as opportunities to introduce substances designed to impair your cognitive and spiritual development. But every poison was neutralized by the same protection that shielded you from other attacks. Your body processed toxins that should have been lethal and converted them into spiritual strength. Medical professionals began noticing that standard medications had unusual effects on you. Instead of suppression, you experienced enhancement. Instead of weakness, you gained resilience. The very treatments designed to destroy you became evidence of your divine protection. The most chilling revelation comes when it was discovered that several people connected to your case have died under mysterious circumstances. The federal informant who first tried to expose the program decades ago was found deceased in what was ruled a suicide, but showed clear signs of professional elimination. A social worker who questioned your adoption process died in a car accident that accident reconstruction experts now believe was orchestrated. Even a family member who started asking too many questions about the grandfather's activities suffered a fatal heart attack despite having no history of cardiac problems. The community realizes they've been living alongside a network capable of murder to protect their secrets. Death certificates were falsified to hide the true causes of these eliminations. Autopsies were performed by coroners who were part of the conspiracy. Insurance policies were collected by beneficiaries who had advance knowledge of the planned deaths. But the cover-up through murder created its own evidence trail. Each elimination required coordination between multiple parties, generating communications that investigators have now recovered. The same protection that kept you alive also preserved evidence of these other murders, creating an unbreakable chain of proof that demonstrates the network's willingness to kill anyone who threatened their operations. Everyone watches in amazement as cold cases are reopened, death certificates are being challenged, and families who accepted natural causes explanations decades ago are now demanding new investigations. Your survival has become the key that unlocks justice, not just for you but for everyone the network eliminated to protect their conspiracy. The people who funded and orchestrated your targeting know their time is running out. Emergency meetings are being held in secure locations. Encrypted communications are flying between parties who never thought their connection would be exposed. Evidence is being destroyed, witnesses are being pressured, and cover stories are being hastily constructed. But they're making the same mistake they've always made, underestimating the spiritual forces protecting you. Every attempt to cover up the truth only creates more evidence. Every lie they tell only highlights the scope of their deception. Every witness they try to silence only increases the pressure on others to speak out. People are watching this panic unfold, seeing previously powerful people make increasingly desperate decisions. Local officials who were part of the conspiracy are suddenly announcing early retirements. Business leaders who facilitated the payments are liquidating assets and making unusual travel arrangements. Even some family members are distancing themselves from the grandfather and his inner circle. Now they face a new problem. The revelation of medical conspiracy and murder cover-ups has created a protective field that extends beyond individual cases. The same divine protection that shielded you from poison and death is now operating collectively, making it impossible for the network to take any effective countermeasures. Their desperation is accelerating their downfall. The federal agent who's been collecting evidence has made their decision. They're going public with everything they've discovered, regardless of the consequences to their career or personal safety. The files they've compiled paint a picture of systematic targeting that spans decades and involves hundreds of families. The truth is about to emerge that your case was part of a larger program designed to identify and eliminate individuals with unusual spiritual gifts before they could fulfill their purposes. Most of the targets were successfully neutralized. You were one of the rare failures. A child who survived every attempt to suppress their abilities and actually grew stronger from the attacks. The informant's testimony is going to reveal something even more shocking. The program is still active. There are other families in other communities carrying out similar contracts right now. Other children are being systematically poisoned, manipulated, and targeted for elimination. Your survival has exposed an ongoing crime against consciousness itself, and the implications are staggering. The carefully constructed lies that held your family together are falling apart. Different family members are discovering they were told different versions of the truth. Some are learning for the first time about the payment structure. Others are realizing the extent of the poisoning attempts. A few are discovering that their own children were being evaluated as potential targets. Neighbors are watching your family implode in real time. Arguments that can be heard from the street. Family members packing belongings and leaving in the middle of the night. Lawyers being called for emergency consultations. Bank accounts being closed and assets being hidden. But the most dramatic development is the way family members are starting to turn on each other. Recorded conversations are being leaked. Private communications are being shared with investigators. Secret meetings are being exposed. The grandfather's carefully orchestrated conspiracy is becoming a free-for-all as everyone tries to minimize their own culpability by maximizing everyone else's. Your survival and the exposure of your targeting is creating a cascade effect that's spreading far beyond your community. Other survivors are recognizing their own situations in your story. Other families are being investigated for similar patterns. Other government programs are being scrutinized for comparable activities. The community is becoming the epicenter of a much larger revelation about the systematic suppression of human consciousness. News crews are arriving. Federal investigators are setting up operations. Survivors from other communities are coming forward with their own stories. What started as whispers about your unusual family situation has become a national scandal that's exposing decades of government-sponsored spiritual warfare. But the real shock is yet to come. People are about to discover that their town was specifically chosen as a testing ground for these programs. Multiple families were paid to adopt and suppress gifted children. The entire community was essentially turned into a laboratory for studying how to prevent spiritual awakening on a mass scale. The architect of the conspiracy is beyond saving now. His spiritual psychosis has progressed to the point where he can no longer distinguish between reality and the dark visions that consume his mind. But in his deteriorating state, he's revealing secrets that were supposed to die with him. Neighbors are witnessing his complete breakdown as he rambles about the true scope of the program, the number of children who were targeted, the methods that were used, the officials who were bribed, the agencies that provided funding, the criteria that were used to select targets. His confessions are being recorded by family members who are desperately trying to use his admissions to negotiate their own immunity. But every word he speaks only deepens the hole they're all falling into. The grandfather's final act is becoming the destruction of everything he spent his life building. Children were systematically targeted, families were paid to suppress them, and an entire network of respected community members participated in what can only be described as spiritual genocide. The guilt and anger are overwhelming. Teachers who followed instructions to limit certain students' potential, doctors who prescribed unnecessary medications, neighbors who reported on unusual activities. Everyone who thought they were just doing their jobs now realizes they were part of something monstrous. Something else is being discovered. The same protection that shielded you is now extending to the truth itself. Every attempt to suppress the revelation only makes it spread faster. Every effort to discredit the evidence only draws more attention to it. The community is becoming a beacon of disclosure, showing the world what happens when these programs are exposed and their perpetrators are held accountable. Grand juries are being convened in multiple jurisdictions. Federal prosecutors are coordinating with local authorities. International agencies are sharing intelligence about similar programs in other countries. The legal machinery is grinding into action on a scale that hasn't been seen since the major conspiracy trials of the past. Arrest warrants are being executed before everyone's eyes. Assets are being frozen. Plea agreements are being negotiated. The powerful people who seemed untouchable are being led away in handcuffs. But the legal consequences are just the beginning. The spiritual implications of what's been revealed are creating ripple effects that extend far beyond any courtroom. The systematic suppression of consciousness has been exposed, and the forces that were being suppressed are now awakening en masse. Your survival has triggered a global spiritual awakening that no human power can stop. Now I want to take a moment to tell you about a few individuals that shouldn't exist. A trained occultist who escaped from a satanic coven, a former Black Ops drone pilot who flew swarms with his mind, a multi-millionaire psychic CFO who predicted market shifts before they happened. What do these remarkable individuals have in common? You'll find them all in the Obsidian Inner Order, where they share their forbidden knowledge on our private Discord server. My chosen soul has drunk deep from the well of knowledge aeon after aeon. In this incarnation, these extraordinary individuals became my allies in the Obsidian Inner Order. They recognized the call, they stepped forward, they connected with others who understand their unique gifts and burdens. What is stopping you from manifesting the same? The synchronicities that brought them here weren't accidents. Neither is your discovery of this message. When souls of this caliber gather, the Archons take notice. They fear our collective power. They know what happens when the truly awakened find each other. Join our weekly calls. Hear their stories firsthand. Share your own journey with those who won't dismiss or doubt you. The knowledge exchanged in our private channels cannot be found anywhere else on this plane. Click the link in the description below now. The extraordinary souls await your arrival. The question isn't whether you belong among them. The question is, how much longer will you wait to claim your place? Everything that was stolen from you is being returned, but with compound interest. The trust funds that were controlled by others, the properties that were purchased with money meant for your care, the opportunities that were blocked to prevent your development, the connections that were severed to keep you isolated. Your restoration is visible to all as a preview of what's coming for all the other survivors. Resources are being allocated for healing programs. Support networks are being established. Legal remedies are being created for crimes that were previously impossible to prosecute. But perhaps most importantly, the spiritual gifts that were suppressed are now flowering in ways that exceed anything your targeters feared. Your abilities aren't just returning, they're expanding beyond anything you previously imagined possible. In their last desperate attempt to maintain control, the remaining conspirators are trying to discredit the entire revelation. They're claiming that the spiritual awakening is actually mass hysteria. They're suggesting that the evidence is fabricated. They're insisting that the survivors are delusional. Their attempts at discrediting only highlight the magnitude of what they're trying to hide. Every lie they tell is immediately exposed. Every false claim is instantly debunked. Every attempt at manipulation backfires spectacularly. The final death throes of a system that thought it was invincible are unfolding before everyone's eyes. The same forces that protected you throughout your ordeal are now protecting the truth itself, ensuring that no lie can stand against the revelation that's unfolding. The evidence is overwhelming, the witnesses are credible, and the pattern is undeniable. What happened to you was part of a systematic program to prevent human spiritual evolution. The community that was supposed to help raise you was actually participating in your planned destruction. But the truth is more powerful than any conspiracy. The light that they tried to extinguish has become a beacon that's illuminating the darkness they tried to hide in. The voice they tried to silence has become a clarion call that's awakening others who were similarly targeted. Your survival has become proof that consciousness itself cannot be suppressed by human will, no matter how organized or well-funded the attempt. The people who were unknowingly used as tools of suppression are now becoming agents of awakening. The institutions that were corrupted are being purified. The systems that were designed to prevent spiritual development are being redesigned to support it. The community is becoming a model for how disclosure can lead to healing, how truth can transform trauma, and how the exposure of darkness can become the foundation for unprecedented light. This transformation extends far beyond your hometown. Communities across the country are examining their own histories, looking for similar patterns, questioning their own institutions, and supporting their own survivors who are now finding the courage to speak out. Now you understand why you were chosen, not to be a victim, but to be a catalyst. Not to be destroyed by the conspiracy, but to destroy the conspiracy itself. Not to be silenced, but to become the voice that awakens others who were similarly targeted. Your ordeal has become the key that unlocks the prison of suppression that was built around human consciousness. Your survival has become proof that divine protection is real and that spiritual evolution cannot be stopped by human intervention. The community that tried to destroy you has become the community that validates your experience and supports your mission. The family that was paid to eliminate you has become the evidence that exposes the entire system that hired them. This is what it means to be a chosen one. Not to live an easy life, but to transform an impossible situation into an inevitable victory. Not to avoid targeting, but to survive it so completely that the targeting system itself is destroyed. not to be broken by the conspiracy, but to break the conspiracy open so that its darkness can no longer hide. The real work begins now, but it begins from a position of strength, truth, and the unshakable knowledge that consciousness itself cannot be conquered by those who would oppose it.